In railway stations across England, ticket offices are to close. We buy our tickets online, apparently, these days, almost entirely. Only 12% of tickets were sold at ticket offices last year, according to the Rail Delivery Group, which represents the train companies. In theory, of course, there will be staff on the concourses able to sell tickets physically and direct people around. In theory. I wonder how long that will last. Anyway, this means hundreds of rail staff will lose their jobs, and people who aren't fully online or who, for other reasons, rely on the presence of a physical ticket office can forget it. Isn't modern life wonderful? A very few ticket offices will remain in the very biggest stations, but all around the country, the familiar places will close. And local papers are reporting this story in every part of England. Mick Lynch, who leads the RMT union, is with me now. Mick, good to see you there. There is a public consultation on this going forward. Do you think this is simply window dressing, or is it real?
Well, it's an attempt at window dressing, but we're certainly going to make it real. We're going to be mobilising our members and the public and the disabled groups, women's groups, spokespeople for the blind groups and the people that have got disabilities, because this is an attack on a human railway. And it's what we're seeing right across our economy, where our high streets have been stripped out of bank branches. All sorts of services are now online, and many people struggle with that. But it's also about security, and the ticket office issue is a bit of a diversion in some ways. We believe in ticket offices, but once they've got these regulations out of the way, and the ticket office regulations are the only thing that guarantees station staffing, they will de-staff stations en masse, and it's even in their proposals. And what they'll put forward is some half-hearted commitments that we'll try to get an assistant to you. But if you're disabled, if you're an elderly person, somebody who's just worried about their journey or has got some learning difficulties, for instance, there will not be a guaranteed person there. And in most stations that they've got away with it already, they have completely de-staffed. There's nobody on them at all. And if that's the entire rail network, we've got a very frightening prospect in front of us. And they are intent on making hundreds, if not thousands, of redundancies through this method.
I mean, I do not have learning difficulties, but I am mildly disabled, and I rely on the kind of physical security, if I could put it that way, of having staff around, occasionally ask them which way to go, which way the platforms are, and so on. So the idea of an unstaffed, entirely empty concourse, I find quite scary. Do you think, I mean, you mentioned disabled people there at the beginning. Is it really the issue for older and disabled people? Those are the people you have to mobilise to turn this around and stop it happening.
We do, but we're contacted by women's groups, people that are anxious about travel. If you're a shift working nurse, for instance, coming off a late shift on the NHS or going to a super early shift, you want to know that unsocial behaviour is being monitored by trained members of staff, that you can be alerted. What they're promising is an app or a call centre. Now, if you've got a gang of youth, I'm not caricaturing youth in this way, but if you've got some troublemakers that are bothering women or anyone else, you want to know that there are people around that can raise the alert, can intervene.
Yeah.
That's what the public support. I don't think we want a really stripped out railway service. And this is about maximising profits. These train operating companies have made profits throughout the pandemic and throughout these strikes where they're subsidised. We predicted a year ago and 2 years ago that they would make this move. And it's not just the ticket office staff. They are taking away train dispatch staff. They're taking away all the customer assistance staff and the mobility people that can drive people around in little buggies or just give that arm for people to lean on when they're feeling a bit tired. They're going to do the same to catering and other grades, Andrew, and it's a mark of what's to come. They want to strip the railway out and make it completely dehumanised, in our view.
Mick, you're a socialist, and you mentioned the high street a moment ago. I just want to ask you a more general question. Do you think that the online world, where we live virtually, you don't see police around a lot of the time, the high streets are empty, perhaps train stations will become empty, is unfair, in particular to people who don't have the wealth to have good internet connections and the computers? In other words, it's making society more unequal.
Well, and it's dystopian as well, I believe, Andrew. I mean, we're getting a hollowed out inner city areas where people can't rely on the human touch, and councils are doing this increasingly. If you want to get in contact with your council about a service or a benefit or what have you, all you get is go on the app, go on this, and if if you're in your 70s or 80s or 90s, that's not much use. And it condemns people to a very enclosed life, I think. And we want to make our cities and towns and villages vibrant. The railway's part of that because it connects people up. But if people are scared of travel and what they'll be charged, because of course these algorithms that they want to channel people through are not going to give you the best fare. They'll give you the best fare for the company. Whereas a member of station staff might say, well, if you hold back 15 minutes, you'll get a much cheaper fare. But there's an off-peak service just around the tick of the hour or whatever. It's totally tuned to making money for the companies and cutting their costs. And that's not acceptable. We want a human face to our railway and all our public services.
You've had your disputes right across the NHS. There are disputes. I came into work this morning, a big march by teachers around central London. Do you believe that a future Labour government is going to come in and be able to resolve some of these huge public sector pay issues, or do you think we're just whistling in the wind?
Well, they're going to have to. They can't watch this continued transfer from working class people, of wealth I'm talking about, to the rich. The super rich are accumulating it and getting richer all the time, including the executives of these train operating companies, taking £500,000, £1 million a year out of the system. So they've got to, a Labour Party, even if it's not overtly socialist, has got to be about fairness and a little bit of rebalancing our society. So they're going to have to fund public service. That includes the staff. If you don't fund the staff, you'll have this brain drain to Australia and New Zealand and wherever. We're importing people from Africa and the Far East while we're exporting people to Australia and other parts. It's a ridiculous system. It's a merry-go-round. Lots of middle people, agencies and so forth, making tons of money. The Labour Party's got to put a stop to it. And we in the unions will certainly put them under the maximum pressure we can, because I don't trust them, if I'm honest with you. I think they're trying to blend into the Tory background and the consensus that we hear from the media every day, and we've got to put them under maximum pressure as independent trade unions.
Mick Lynch, a really interesting conversation. Thanks for talking to us.